Welcome to the Green Ocean Weekly Podcast, a show to inspire current and aspiring leaders in real estate. I'm Paige Ward, your host. Welcome again. Here we go. We're part 2 of accountability. And so we talked a little bit about it last week, but we're going to dig a little deeper in today's episode. We're going to talk maybe a little bit about personal accountability, accountability to your team, maybe even your community, because there's all sorts of it. And we are so fortunate today to have an expert in the field. We're going to be introducing her in just a moment, but we hope you sit back, enjoy the show, and here we go. Now, as you know, we do like to start each week with a what went well. And Hien, I'm going to put you right on the spot immediately because you're our special guest. And I'd like to know for you this week, what went well?
As you know, during this time with COVID and isolation and a lot of virtual working, employees are really suffering, and so are leaders. And the leaders may not seem like they are, but you know, as human beings, the isolation is really tough. And not only that, but we have become a society where our kids go off to daycare, or they go off to school, or we have a nanny, and then we go off to work, and we have this other life. Well, with COVID and isolation, all of that is coming together. And so not only are we trying to find a new way to work, but now we're coming into our reality, right? Our reality of we have children and we have them every day. And then the other thing too is not all of us do well working from home. And so a lot of companies are trying to grapple with how do you keep morale up? How do you help leaders to be able to come from a place where they're healthy so that they can help their team members to be healthy? So this week, I have been participating in sessions where there is an expert in motivation and in inspirational speaking. And so he is actually running sessions, and I get to observe the sessions, and then I support the leaders after the session. And, you know, as a participant in that, right, I participated now in 3 or 4 sessions. And the first hour of the session, all we're doing is sharing, you know, and then the question he asked is, how are you now? And so it's really interesting because you can't just say, oh, I'm fine, right? It opens up this thing, and this is your opportunity to be seen and heard. And so for these leaders, right, this is their second time in a 2-month span, but I am attending all of these sessions, and I need to participate and open up and talk about how are you now? And so as I'm listening to these leaders open up and talk about these things that they're really struggling with professionally, personally, you know, I have to show up. And so what I'm doing well now is I am showing up in these sessions. And each time I walk into it and I think, what am I going to peel back now? I've already peeled back and I've gone deep, you know, and let's just say maybe for a couple of the session, I might have shed a couple of tears, you know, and I thought, surely there's no more tears or no more opening up to do. But what I'm doing well now is being in the moment, being in the context, and allowing whatever wants to show up to show up. And so I would say that's what I'm doing well now. And please don't think that it's, you know, beautiful and flowy. It's not. It's kind of messy, but I'm there and I'm present. So I would have to say this week, that's what I'm doing well.
I think that is awesome. And you know what else it is, Hien, is it's authentic.
Yeah, and it's painful.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. And if we can just accept that, I think it's pretty cool. And I think the results are going to be even better. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that will benefit because of that and your willingness to be authentic. So Howard, what went well for you this week?
For me, what went well, you know, I'm kind of like in this, you know, mid-year review isn't like a one-time thing, right? I like to, you know, generally view like what's going on, you know, what are the projects I'm working on, what's, you know, stuff that's happening in my life and my business and work and all these other things. So I'm reviewing actually my MVP from 2 years ago, literally my mission, vision, kind of passion, like, you know, kind of, you know, because I've got it all written down in my project management. And this is the big loftier, like, this is my 5-10 year kind of vision. And what was really interesting as I was reviewing it, I was just like, whoa, look at this. One of the specific things that I'm trying to do with all the leaders that I basically lead, and the affiliates, the franchise owners, is all of them to use Zoom. And that was my goal 2 years ago, right? To do regular Zoom coaching, for example, use video communication. I'm just like, man, that was not, and right now, of course, COVID has, made it so much faster, but I was just like, for whichever way it happened, that's happening, right? And so that's just part of that journey. So what went well is the vision that I kind of put in place 2 years ago, that's occurring right now. And so it's kind of exciting to see some of that just come to fruition. So I was just like, you know what? It's good to set vision, even the big ones that are kind of out there. Because again, like 2 years ago, to think that we would be doing this kind of communication for coaching, for meetings, recruiting in this manner, that was such a lofty goal. And now it's just like, nope, it's here right now. Let's go, right? So I can go ahead and elevate and escalate that conversation. So it was just a neat review, I would say, but that went well, or at least it was kind of like a milestone I felt like I hit. And Paige, of course, we always have to turn it back to you. What went well for you this week?
Well, you know me, I'm a glass half full person. I mean, every day I wake up, I'm starting off good. That went well. So I woke up every day, right? It's gratitude. But that said, I think for me, it's been some really kind of similar, Howard, in that it's some small markers. This is the first half of the year is behind us now, and the first half of this crazy year. And initially, it was a shocking and a bit of a jolt to all of our systems. And then you kind of had to step back, take a look. Okay, what can I do? What am I going to do with this time? Because it's not going to look like what I thought it was. So I sort of had to reassess things and set some other goals within the limitations that we have. And this week has been particularly exciting for me because I've seen some results of setting those goals. And some of these small ones can potentially lead to bigger ones. And that just gets me going. I love it. Can't say too much now, but it's just super exciting to me because it's such a great payoff. And no matter how things turn out, it's nice to be going in the right direction. And that makes me happy. So life is good. And that went well. And Howard, I know you had some specific questions to kind of kick it off, but so I'm going to throw it to you, Howard.
Yeah, so we've got basically our subject matter expert, if that's okay to share, or at least in the years that I've known Hien, it's just like, hold on, after about the first 5 minutes, I almost need to stop her and say, I need another session because I need to just digest the first 5 minutes of what you just shared, because there's so many different layers. And, I think in the real estate space, when it comes to coaching, our view of coaching is kind of narrow. And a lot of times it's associated to accountability coaching. And Hien is actually kind of, the person that I think and respond and ask all the questions regarding the space of coaching and the evolution of coaching, right? Especially for leadership. And, we'll ask her to kind of give us a little bit of a backdrop. But before we even do that, we're talking a little bit earlier before we got started, and this is a bit of a curveball, but Hien is having conversations with leaders and, working with, various just members of her community. But you know what? The Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd scenario, it's been months, but, we can't let this conversation kind of die. And I was just wondering if Hien would be willing to, number one, of course, share just her backdrop, a little bit about herself, but then also just give us a perspective in terms of what's some conversations that you've been hearing among colleagues, among leadership, or just personal perspectives on, how to keep the conversation alive, and, what are potentially some just next steps, because I think that's an important piece that we're all looking for right now, along with, of course, awareness.
So I'll start with my coaching journey. So definitely becoming a coach is a journey, and it's a journey not so much of toil, but it's a journey of self-realization. So I was a head of HR for about 20 years plus in the startup community for biotech and medical device companies. And what I did was I helped CEOs and founders start and or scale their companies. And in that work, I really had to figure out what they were thinking, what was their vision, what were they trying to do, and also to help them understand their impact and to also help them understand the context of their company and what that meant to attract talent and to attract resources. But in 2013, I really went for it. So I went and I got certified at the Hudson Institute in Santa Barbara. And then in mid 2015, I purposely left my HR career to just solely focus on coaching. And so the coaching that I did, of course, was an outcome of my work, which is executive coaching. And so April of last year, 2019, I went in-house and I'm the leadership coach for Expedia Group in Seattle. I coach leaders in North America, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. And so every day I get to speak to leaders in different parts of the world, and it is fantastic. If for nothing else, because of the wonderful accents I get to encounter, right? So, in the mornings, I get to talk to my colleague in the UK with the British accent. And then in the afternoon, I get to speak to leaders in Asia Pacific, Singapore, Malaysia, China, Japan, or maybe in Oceania, with Australian and New Zealand accents. And so that's what I do. I get to 100% every day immerse myself in learning about coaching, in researching coaching, in coaching and in coaching leaders, and in supporting my colleagues who are coaches. And so right now I'm in my dream job, and my objective is to 10x my experience and my depth as a coach. So that's a little bit about me. Going to the question around Black Lives Matter, right? That's the banner that we put over this. And the banner says Black Lives Matter, but the reality, it is about what is in our Constitution, that every man, woman, child, regardless of gender, race, color, or cognitive diversity, is created equal. We believe that not only because it's in the Constitution, but because that's the way God made us. Now, when we talk about this aspect around diversity and inclusion and equity within companies, and what is the role of the leader, it really depends, right? Because each of us has such a different experience when it comes to that in our own life, and how we've experienced it in business. And so what we have to realize, though, is that we have to be in this place where we can respect our own experiences, because each of us have such a different experience. And at the same time, we also have to honor the fact that other people have different experience. And so you're actually in this place of what I call polarity, right? I'll give you an example. There was a leader yesterday whose husband is in the police. And of course, his community are others in the police force. And on the other hand, she's a leader that leads a very diverse global team. And she's been peppered with a lot of questions. She's standing in this place where she loves her husband, she knows his heart. And then she has this responsibility for a very diverse global team and their experiences. And she was struggling, right? Like, what does she do? And in situations like that, there's actually three experiences that you have to honor. You have to honor the experience of what's in your community. You have to honor your experience, and you have to honor the experience of those that you lead. And here's the point. You don't have to dishonor or disregard one in order to honor the other, right? You have to be able to hold all of them, and that's called polarity, because they may be on opposite ends. So that's the first place, is to realize that it's okay to honor all of those pieces. When it comes to diversity, it is race and gender, but it's also cognitive diversity, right? And let me give you an experience. If you work in a high-tech company, you're going to encounter individuals that, let's say, is with labels that we are very familiar with. Engineers or creatives, right? But there's also other people that are cognitively diverse in a tech company. There are people who are on the spectrum, the autistic spectrum. And so when we talk about diversity, I want to make sure that we're looking at it as a leader to realize that it's not just the ones that are obviously in front of us. And just because they're obvious doesn't mean that we don't give it the depth and the meaning that it needs to have. But we also need to be conscious of other diversity within our team, like cognitive diversity, like diversity where you have individuals that are perhaps more extroverted and individuals that are more introverted. And so there's cognitive diversity, there's behavioral diversity, there's race and gender diversity. But I want to be really, really clear here. I am in no way saying and trying to make and rationalize gender and race diversity. I just want leaders to understand that you have a whole plethora of diversity and that you have to be cognizant of it and you have to invite it and you have to include it because there are, at a minimum, because there are so many studies that say that businesses are more successful with diversity. But there's a thing about diversity that is really important, and I heard it from actually somebody else, is David Clutterbuck. He is a professor and world-renowned expert on team coaching, and this is what he learned. Leaders can have a very good focus on including diversity. Oh, we don't have someone who maybe has an introvert preference that will help this team of extroverts to be more thoughtful and to slow down. It's not enough to say we need somebody with a perspective of Asia Pacific and we need someone with a perspective of African American. It's not enough to include. You now have to take a second step and say, how will we harness and leverage the diversity that we now have included? So it's actually a two-step process: inclusion and then harnessing and using, right? And so someone wrote in a book, and now it's become popular culture, that says this: inclusion, right, or diversity is being asked to the dance. Inclusion is actually being asked to dance. Diversity is inviting people to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. So remember that as a leader when you think about diversity, inclusion, and equity. It's not just including diversity, it's harnessing that diversity.
I told you, Paige, right? The 5 minutes. Okay, I think that's enough.
You got a whole show right there. That's it.
That was, we just need to digest, I mean, what Hien has just shared with us, because it is huge. Because again, I think in the conversations that are happening right now, we don't even know like what is step one and what is step two, right? I mean, I think the awareness is the most obvious, but even like, just a simple analogy like that, even asking to the dance, how do I do that? What's okay? How do I appropriately ask somebody to the dance? And then once, we're at the dance, right? Okay, now what? And so there's just so much to unpack. And again, this entire show isn't necessarily about, just the diversity piece, but, it's so important to have ongoing conversations. I think there is more awareness created just about implicit biases. Because again, up to this point, it's just like, we've only really observed explicit biases, but now this implicit biases, oh gosh, I have to be way more self-reflective than I've ever been without being defensive, right? There's just a lot of just self-reflection that has to occur, I think, first and foremost. I mean, Hien, would you say that's a good starting place?
A lot of leaders read, right, or listen to podcasts, and I would encourage the diversification of the materials you read and the podcasts that you're listening to. I just the other day actually got to watch an interview of Professor Ibram, and I have to apologize, I don't know his full name, but I know the name of his book. It's called Anti-Racist. And I know that book is gaining in popularity, but you need to find Professor Ibram's TED Talks. He's from Boston University, and he is not coming onto the scene and kind of riding the coattails of the popularity. He's been talking about racism and bias and things like that for a very, very, very long time. So he has a lot of experiences. And the word that he really wants us to use is he wants us to use anti-racist. Because if you're anti-racist, it means you're against racism. And any other word that you use really doesn't mean that you are against racism. And I think why he stands out in my mind is that he's chill. He has, have you ever met that person where there's this strong passion, but comes across so chill and so very confident, not because it's a fake confidence, but it's a confidence earned over experience. And so, and then the things that he points out is things that says, wow, I didn't even know that was in my mindset. And so he helps you to think about where your mindset is and where perhaps you need to pivot, right? And so I would recommend that. Look up anti-racist, look up the professor's full name, check out his TED Talks, and maybe even read the book if you're into reading, or listen to what he has spoken about. I think that's a really good place to start.
We got to make sure we're being compliant so that we don't get in trouble. That was almost like the perspective often in terms of just like, oh, watch how you do advertising because you don't want to get into trouble, rather than really the heart and spirit of like, no, that's not what it's about. It's not about not getting in trouble. It's about what you really believe, what you really stand for when it comes to equality, when it comes to fair housing, truly. And the more you just dive and read and realize, just all of the stuff that happened in history, even things that we can still see today. There's still HOA, documents that are still showing that people have just literally missed. That is just completely racist, right? About segregation and all these other things, and we in the real estate, as real estate professionals, as people who really do believe in diversity and the importance of fair housing, we have to not worry as much about what we're not getting in trouble, but rather doing what's right, really making a stand. And that goes to our own moral compass.
I just want to say one last thing about the whole aspect of DE&I and leadership and accountability is this. My perspective is right now where we are in this point in history with COVID, with self-isolation, with the issues around diversity, inclusion, and equity. There hasn't been a time in my life, and I'm 56 years old, there hasn't been a time in my life where every aspect of my life is in flux. And when you think of yourself as a leader, every aspect is in flux. And the choice that you have is to hang on to everything that's falling off the walls, the proverbial walls, right? Or trying to, grab an anchor and try and throw it out and anchor to something. So those are choices that we can make, or we can become resilient. And resilience isn't how fast you bounce back. Resilience is allowing things to flow through you, feeling it fully, and then learning and growing from it. So I think this is a fantastic time, although a painful time, for us to shake off the debris and the things that we used to believe and the things that we did that made us successful that may not work today, and it may not work for the world that's emerging through all of this. And so that's my invitation to leaders, is as you go through these things, that you think about that, right? Think about, how does the subject of the current diversity and inclusion help you to maybe shake off some old beliefs that maybe belonged in a time back that way, but isn't going to be productive or help you to be a successful leader this way. And it's not just for diversity and inclusion, it's also about, how do you get your teams through remotely, et cetera, et cetera. So, I wanted to put that bow around it, because I think that's the opportunity in all of this is, to kind of shake off some of our armor that doesn't fit anymore and maybe become a bit more flexible and resilient in what we do.
But all that being said, we want to talk about accountability. And last week, we spoke about accountability part 1. and we talked a little bit about, kind of in the accountability space. Okay, I can try to hold myself accountable, then maybe like creating some tiers of accountability. I can like have a spouse or somebody at home, personal accountability that way. We talked about when a manager or a franchise owner, maybe a broker who might hold us accountable. And then we talked about peer accountability. So there's kind of like these four little levels of accountability between a peer and a manager and somebody at home and just ourselves. But all that to say, number one, just give us a perspective, and about, accountability as far as, where do you, just how would you define it? What's the importance of it? Any just, just on the word itself, or thoughts there?
So the three aspects of accountability that I look at, and it's for really any kind of a system or process that we look at, is the form, the function, and the spirit, right? So let's talk about function. The function of accountability is to help us be, to be able to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do. And that can take a lot of forms. That could be something we put on our task list that pops up in a week, right? So accountability is this thing, this impetus to get us to do what we say we're going to do. The form is how that's applied. Like I mentioned, it could be on your calendar that reminds you to do it. It could be in these different levels of relationship. And the spirit is the key to anything that we do as a process or system, and that is the heart and the mindset that it comes with. If you use any sort of email system, it comes with a task list, and you can put on there, I want to go and buy a wedding gift for a wedding this coming Saturday. That you just set yourself up accountability. Now the form is that's going to pop up, and then you're going to say snooze or something like that, and then it'll pop up again, snooze. Well, it's mechanical. There's no spirit there. It doesn't have any idea that your kid fell off the bike and scraped a knee, and when you were supposed to go, you couldn't go, and so you snoozed it. And then your dog barfed all over the carpet, right? So there's no spirit around that. It's just form and function, form and function. The spirit part is what really motivates us. So let's take the aspect of, let's say, the peer-to-peer part of it, right? And so you have a peer, let's just say in the real estate office, and you say to your peer, you know what, I'm running out of ideas, and I'm kind of running low on motivation, and so I want to read one motivational book a week. Would you help me do that? And so the peer says, of course I will, right? And so then there's a couple of ways that the spirit shows up. And that spirit is either the peer, texts and says, hey, did you read your book this week? Oh, that's not much spirit, right? And let's just say we advance it a little bit, and they're like, hey, you know what? And you were talking about reading that book, so how'd you do? Right? So that's another level. And then another level is, hey, you said you were going to read that book. I got the book too, and I read it. Do you want to talk about it? So what's the difference of those three? Let's just say we can view it and say three different approaches. So what's the big deal? The big deal is this. The one where you just go, hey, did you read the book? There's almost zero relationship in that. The other one where it's like, hey, you talked about reading this book. Did you read the book? It's getting warmer, right? And then the third one where it's like, hey, you know how you said you're going to read that book? Well, I bought the book and I read it. You want to talk? Think about that. Think about if you were that other person that you asked for that accountability. What is your level of commitment to accomplishing what you want to accomplish if all you got was a text from this other person? Okay, now think about how motivating is it when someone comes back and says, hey, you said you were going to do this. How are you going to do this? Now think about this person comes and goes, you said you're going to get the book. I have the book. Let's discuss it. You can feel the warmth. You can feel the commitment. You can feel the interest. And that's called relationship.
And I got to stop you for a minute. Oh my gosh. I mean, like everybody who's listening to this, or, this on accountability, I've never really broken it down into those three areas. And I think a lot of times, you know, we act literally as the form, as the
Yes.
like the automation. Hey, did you do it? I mean, you know, as if like, you know, we. Oh my goodness! But you're right. The spirit, without the spirit, it's so demotivating. You know,
It,
what's the purpose? And I think now, if I think historically about so many of the groups that I've seen, whether I was leading them or just kind of see them fizzle out, there's no spirit there, and that spirit function is huge. It,
it's huge. It's
I have
huge.
a great example of a good spirit and accountability. But I was talking to a friend about a week ago, told her my husband and I are going to have a garage sale this weekend. And she'd asked if I read the Tidying Up book by Marie Kondo. And I said, no, I haven't, but I've always wanted to. That'd be cool. I should get it. And so about 2 days later, she texted me because she swore this was going to be, you know, a huge change. And I'll get rid of a lot more in that garage sale if I just read this book, right? So 2 days later, I get a text. Hey, did you get that book? No, I didn't. I've been kind of busy, but I want to. The next day, on my porch was a box delivered with that book in it. And it was so fun and so sweet and kind and thoughtful. I mean, I didn't even ask that, but she knew me well enough to know that I maybe needed that little push.
Yeah.
And she didn't even ask. I mean, she just did it. And that kind of accountability, I just loved because it came from a very loving place, you know, and I immediately started reading the book. So I think I'll make at least an extra $100 this weekend because of it.
Perfect. That's perfect. And I love that example, right? That example. I mean, you know, there's a relationship there, and she
Mhm.
showed you that she cared, and not only did she care, but she cared about helping you achieve what you wanted to achieve, and she knew that in that instance, sending you the book was going to help you achieve your goal. And so
Right.
this is why the spirit or the relationship underneath the accountability is just so important, because you know, if we know that that person cares about us and cares about our success, it not only motivates us, but also we don't want to disappoint them, right? And for on their end of it, there's no way we could disappoint them because they believe so much in us. But it is that relationship. It is knowing that this person cares. The other piece of this is not only is it the relationship for the person that wants to be held accountable, but it's also the relationship of the person that's holding you accountable. For them, they're honored that they get to be a part of your journey. But here's the thing: when we get to be a part of anyone's life, that's an honor. And so when we think about accountability, it's not just the form and the function, but it is the relationship of one another, and how in that relationship we actually help each other to be successful.
Especially with those that you're the closest to,
Yes.
because there's one thing to say, you know, hey, remind me to do this or, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they might, and you don't. And it's like, that's okay. You know what I'm saying? They'll let you get away with it.
Yes.
So be mindful about who you're asking to hold you accountable and for the right reasons, and be very specific,
Yes.
because otherwise you're not doing anybody any favors.
Exactly, exactly. And you know, it can also go the other way too, where you know, if you know, if someone really close to you, if their behavior, their style is to be very, you know, okay, you want me to hold you accountable? Okay. And you know, it's like every day, it's like, how are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? So I love this point that you're making, Paige, that there it has to be a balance,
Mhm.
and you know, be wise about who you ask to be in relationship with you for the accountability, and be very specific, because not only for them but for you, what do you specifically want out of this? And I would say that when it comes to accountability, don't try and do five different things at one time. Focus on one thing at a time, and get that, and then you know, get through that, and then do the next thing and do the next thing, because it's very hard for our brains can only hold so much in prioritization. Five is the max, one is minimum, three is the sweet spot. So if you ask somebody to hold you accountable on six things, guess what happens to your brain? The prioritization or the importance of the order goes away. And so, be focused on what it is you want to be held accountable for.
I feel like you've really challenged the real estate industry's, I guess, whole approach when it comes to this accountability coaching. Honestly, when so frequently we talk about coaching, we just talk about this accountability piece. And in the accountability, we so frequently are going toward, honestly, the form and the function without the spirit. And so often we kind of the accountability or some of the groups, they kind of fail or they fizzle out because you feel guilty, right? Like, I just feel guilty not doing the activities. And so nobody really, like, as soon as like we bring up accountability, some people are like, yeah, let's hold each other accountable, but then it fizzles out, right? Because it's all about guilt. And you're completely saying, no, if we focus on spirit first, on relationship first, it's a completely different approach, rather than, I guess, like, I just need somebody to tell me what to do and to hold me accountable, kind of like that form. Did you do these things? And there's going to be a lot of reflection here, I think, from a lot of leaders and a lot of real estate professionals to be like, boy, maybe we got it all wrong, or maybe the way that we need to go about this is very different than what we've done in the past.
Well, I think it's an evolution, right? If we step back a little bit and just look at coaching, coaching has gone through an evolution. And so coaching now is much more sophisticated. We know more about it. There is even the British Psychological Society even has a special chapter on just coaching psychology. And so coaching has evolved. It continues to evolve. It's become more sophisticated. There's more of an understanding of how it actually works, in our brain and in our body. And so what I would say is that the accountability coaching that we still see in the real estate industry has the opportunity to evolve, because that coaching is transactional coaching. Transactional coaching is, and it still happens, right? When you look at large companies that have sales team, especially phone sales team, there are coaches, and all they do is listen to tapes all day long of particular sales agents, and then sit with the sales agents and say, okay, when you said this phrase, your tone was wrong. So how would you practice that tone, right? So it's very transactional, and it works, on a technical basis, on things that are very minute and that you're trying to move up and down and make difference. So what happens if we take that example of a salesperson, a phone salesperson, and they're doing that, their skill set is going to be better and better. Every time they pick up that phone and they have that conversation, they're going to be able to recognize their tone and modulate it. And that's transactional and it's effective. In the real estate industry, though, it's about relationship. And so if you want to be successful in that, it's not about transaction, it's about transformation. How do you transform yourself so that you are operating from your best self? So not just the form and function of how to pitch, but it's also the spirit of pitching. So that when you pitch to that client, is their heart? And how are you showing up as your true self so that you're differentiated from that other agent that's going to come in about 2.5 hours and pitch to list their house, right? And so I think this is why the real estate industry has some real opportunities to understand that when you are face to face, when you are with the client, you need to be agile. You need to take some risk in showing up. And that's about transformational coaching, and maybe not so much around transactional coaching, which is the old school accountability coaching that we see so much and so often.
Paige, you can see why she's one of our coaches. We released her content first on Green Ocean, and
Right.
there's so much additional follow-up. It's just amazing stuff always when I have a conversation with you, Hien.
My husband's in the industry. He's been in the industry 16, 17 years. And he's had to go through a transformation. And he's done that because, other agents who were far ahead of them and had gotten a lot of wisdom, by trial and error, invested in him. And so, in the same way, I believe in giving back and in investing. And I know that that's what this podcast is about. I know that's what your heart is about, Paige, and also your heart, Howard. And so I'm just, happy to be able to contribute and, invest, in the current generation of agents, but also in the upcoming generation of agents.
With that, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. We hope you were inspired by today's show, and be sure to sign up for your free trial at greenoceantv.com. Learn from master-level industry experts and complete the all-important Go Actions. Go Actions help you and your team execute effective tasks in business and life each and every week. Thanks again, and we'll see you again soon.